Alrighty, we might get this show on the road, if that's okay. Welcome to the Lifestyle, Environment, Heritage and Resilience Committee, number 858. Whenever we gather, we acknowledge and pay our respects to the traditional Aboriginal people of the land on which we gather. We acknowledge all their descendants. We also acknowledge the many Aboriginal people from other regions, as well as Torres Strait and South Sea Islander people who now live in the local area and have made an important contribution to our community. Great to have councillors with us today. We've got a full committee, and we've also got Councillor Gates, Councillor Fowler and Councillor Hamill who have joined us. Thanks for coming. Let's kick the show off. Is there any leaves of absence? Nothing like that? No? Confirmation of the minutes, and I would just do the minutes by itself first. Does someone want to move? Oh, thank you, Councillor Castro. Second, Councillor Marshall. All those in favour? Those minutes are carried. Any conflict of interest declarations today? No? Great. The forward planning schedule is the only starred item. Did anyone have any questions about the forward planning schedule? Great. Does anyone want to move it? Thank you, Councillor Castro. Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Councillor Castro. Seconded, Councillor Wilkinson. All those in favour? That motion is carried. We have one item on the agenda today and then a general business item that will be dealt with a bit later on. Program Air. Kathy.
Good morning, councillors. I welcome Mark and Sharon to the floor. Today they're going to give you an update on Program AIR, which is Advocacy, Information and Resilience, and the Evacuation Capability Centre enhancements. Over to you, Mark.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Chair. Councillors, a pleasure this morning to provide you an update on our implementation of Program AIR, which is our city response to the severe wind hazard assessment, South East Queensland, and also an evacuation centre capability enhancement based on the lessons from So the purpose of Program AIR, so just to remind everyone around advocacy, information and resilience, and this was a resolution of council some 2 years ago to implement resilience measures and uplift our community literacy around severe wind hazard events. And what we've done is added the evacuation centre capability enhancement planning as a work stream within Program AIR. So we've done that from the report that's attached to the agenda item that we learned from around critical infrastructure resilience, and also our internal learnings around evacuation centres during XTC Alfred and the increasing vulnerability across the city. So the AIR again and the 7 work packages, so just briefly working through those. So the severe wind advocacy and the work that we do across other local governments in Queensland, South East Queensland, and also the state government. The severe wind household resilience grant program, which I'll talk to today, our uplifting community information and general cyclone readiness, the tropical cyclone subplan that we're working on, the city-owned critical infrastructure and places of refuge, and the shelter needs assessment that we've been working around, looking where our vulnerabilities, where the best of these centres are, and the severe wind strata study and industry engagement. And really important to note that we have attracted already some state and federal funding towards this project, and I'll talk to that, some of the advocacy we were doing in relation to some of our future programs of work as well. So I just thought it would be important just to clarify the difference between places of refuge and evacuation centres. So the place of refuge is a building which has been identified as somewhere that people provide higher level of protection and occupants during the passage of a cyclone. So a place of refuge might be open for 12 hours or 18 hours. It wouldn't have the same sort of facilities as an evacuation centre, which would be bedding, food, power generation, etc., and so forth. I guess it's a place where we can put people to survive versus an evacuation centre which is established to support early recovery, connect people with services, etc., and so forth. So just really important because these terms do quite often get used interchangeably. And then the last one that gets used as well is a cyclone shelter, which we see in central and north Queensland, and that's different again. That's effectively a place of refuge and an evacuation centre built in together. So for our city, we're talking about places of refuge as one and evacuation centres as a separate function. So from our places of refuge, the retrofit, these are some of the assessment criteria that we walk through. So it needs to be accessible in the hours leading up to extreme winds, and the report talks about that, the need to evacuate early, be safe, clear of flood levels under flash flooding, riverine flooding and storm surge, have a structure with cladding system that is likely to survive a wind event, and provide safety against debris impact and injuries sustained as a result of a wind-driven rain event. So following the initial assessment, the James Cook University, which is we've partnered up as part of Program AIR, they've assessed 19 buildings, and the buildings were examined around their suitability as either a place of refuge or a resilient building to be able to be used as an evacuation centre. And there's 5 buildings that are progressing through to the next level of assessment, which are some of them are shown up there. So we looked at Coomera Indoor Sports Centre. The access road subject to flooding. The structure wasn't suitable for retrofit. Narang Cycle Centre, access roads subject to flooding. Kira Hill Community Centre. The structure wasn't suitable for retrofit due to several factors, including heritage status and inadequacies in the existing bracing and tie-down system of that building. Some of the buildings that have been identified as potential places of refuge requiring further assessment: Helensvale Library, Pimpamar Community Centre, Runaway Indoor Sports Centre. And what we're doing is we're working across the areas of council. For example, we know at the Runaway Indoor Sports Centre, there's an existing asset upgrade project that's underway, and we're working with that, as we know with Helensvale Library as well. So we're working with those project teams to step through that and use those opportunities for retrofit as we do that. When the assessments go through, they look at hydraulic, structural, services renewal, concept and detailed retrofit designs, value for money estimates, and then they progress through a procurement to construction process is where we've headed with that one. From a new builds perspective, the Ormo Community Hub is one that is probably the first one that we're looking from a design element that will do place of refuge and build up to that. So the total investment of that is $9 million over 2 years, and we've requested $4.5 million of the Commonwealth, and that announcement is due in September 25. So we're hoping that we can do a cost shift, and that's what we've been trying to do. And the advantage of council resolving the investment over 5 years allows us to have these really good discussions with the state and Commonwealth government and have certainty about our side of the funding, and then being able to then put that up as far as grant applications and get that offset. The Community Facilities and Service Review, which I know council has considered, we're working hand in hand with those teams to identify any new and emerging buildings that we can look at for places of refuge. We look at either whether it's the entire building or whether it's part of the building, and then the cost benefit around that. We're working with the Resilient Building Council around the Severe Wind Household Resilience Program, and this is announced by the Mayor the week before last, and that's around a Tier 1 program, which is 40 homes that will be assessed, that can put up their hand to be assessed, and then free self-assessments for 1,000 homes. So this is very much an explore, crawl before we walk, before we run, but it allows residents to work with us and communities to work with us to actually look at how they can make their own building more resilient. And at the table, we've also had discussions around the Insurance Council, around what benefits that they see if people are taking the initiatives to make their own homes more resilient. So that program has just begun and is being rolled out and being promoted as we speak. That's some of the assessment criteria that the Resilient Building Council will work through around the exposure to a range of hazards. So it's not just winds with the Resilient Building Council. We're looking at flood, bushfire, storm. So anyone within those three are able to look at, as far as an EOI, a variety of detached housing types and gaps, ages, and it's supported by our internal working group. So we've got natural hazards looking at where, as I said, if we look at a particular property, if it has 3 hazards, we're able to then integrate that into the design. City design and marketing and comms around promoting the program, and as I said, working really closely with the Resilient Building Council's technical working group. So what we found from the JCU report from ex-tropical cyclone Alfred was that there was minimal structural damage due to lower than expected wind speed. So we know that the highest wind speed was, I think, about 108 kilometres at Coolangatta. It was only a few hours before that they were predicting up to 150 to gusting to 165. So we were very lucky there. Most of the structural failures were linked to poor maintenance and outdated construction and could have been avoided with compliance to current standards, not change standards. Some of the unsecured outdoor items remained highlighted the need for stronger community preparedness, and you'll recall we were messaging every day around the high rises around bringing those items in, and I think, look, I live in one of those, and I saw around my neighbours that was pretty compliant, but there was some people that didn't do that, and that's the secondary risk. High rise buildings did experience unexpected wind effects, including lifted pavers, cladding failures, indicating a need for design improvements in those areas, and a stronger cyclone event could have led to more significant structural and flood damage, particularly in the buildings not designed for high internal pressures. So that was the conclusions. And the recommendations was around messaging for future tropical cyclones in the area, selection of corrosion-resilient materials for hidden structural elements, weatherproofing for buildings, fastening, balconing, pavers, resilient measures for tall buildings. And in response to that, we are now doing our storm tide and wind safety tropical cyclone plan. So we're working on that as part of the LDMG preparedness. The public education and comms ready, so as part of our Get Ready Gold Coast program, that's being rolled out and increasing the discussion around that. And what we're finding is talking with the community. This week I was up at Jacobs Well on Saturday and then down at Guanabara on Sunday. People are really talking about this now after the Christmas event, and now that we've had TC Alfred, they're very much they're much more, I guess, front of mind around resilience, having a generator, thinking about how they can actually prepare their home and their communities. From a corrosion resilient materials, we've recommended for coastal buildings with the severe wind strata study that we're doing, so that's co-funded by the state around what that looks like, and that might inform the future strata resilience rating project. From a weatherproofing point of view, again, we're working through the severe wind household resilience program and looking at how we can integrate that. And resilience measures for buildings, again, we're working through that strata program in a way that we can then make recommendations to the industry. So moving now to our evacuation centres, we've done an assessment of all the city-owned venues in relation to critical infrastructure and operational requirements, and what we're looking to do is invest $1.8 million of the capital program this year into uplifting the evac centres. TC Alfred taught us a lot around the vulnerability across the city, and we never had a demand as such as what we did for TC Alfred across the 3 evacuation centres that we opened. And what we found is that we don't have that ability to actually then get the switchboards, for example, rewired stuff. So what we're looking to do, and also talking around the communications outages greater than 3 days, we know our communities have been 7 to 10 days, is uplifting that around having power generation, communications with Starlink and water at these evacuation centres. So most of the community were really responsive. We know we hit 3.1 million hits on our dashboard, but it dropped off every day after we lost power. So having the ability for people to come to these centres, we know evac centres, people can come in for an hour or two, charge their devices. Some people will want to stay overnight. So having that ability to have that infrastructure uplifted. And so from a short-term perspective around the uplift of those facilities, we're looking at Pimpamar Community Centre, Runaway Bay Indoor Sports Centre, Lower Beachmont Centre, and Nerang Bicentennial Centre, and Burleigh Waters. So lifting up the capability of those centres within 20 weeks is where we're heading with, as far as stock and design changes, that we can actually have those resilience and have that ready for this season. Thank you, Chair.
That's great. Then we have some questions. Councillor Castro. And then Councillor Martin.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just through you, when you speak about Nerang Bicentennial, my understanding is that probably isn't the strongest of buildings at the moment. So there was a suggestion that I know I sent through, and I think Councillor Young also independently sent something through. We were both approached by private was a church close by with a building that was, built like a German tank, basically.
Wow.
Yeah, so
It's a Lutheran church, was it?
and I just wondered whether, we had looked at private facilities as well as just our own buildings.
It's a good question.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, Councillor Castro, that's the next phase of this project. So the initial phase was city-owned buildings, so we're still within that phase, but we are certainly looking at that. In relation to Nerang, you're right in the relation to a severe wind event, but from a flooding or a bushfire event, Nerang still serves us well, and many of the backbone upgrades that we're talking about, should Nerang be redeveloped, will be able to be pulled out and actually bolted into a new centre if the decision was to upgrade that centre.
Yep. On a more relevant note as well, a church venue that was being used as a kind of a place of refuge in Mudgeeraba, they hosted their own kind of post-event meeting the other day and invited the Disaster Management Centre, Mudgeeraba Uniting Church, and the Disaster Management Centre went out, and this church is actually looking at doing some expanded building project, and the Disaster Management Centre has provided some really good insights into how that can be, that building project that they're embarking on separately from council entirely can potentially be enhanced to be able to be a place of refuge. So my feeling is that your team, Mark, is already, whilst we're not quite in that phase yet, you're already in that space advising private third parties about ways they can be more resilient in times of, storm or heavy rainfall or.
Yep. That's correct, yeah. So we're out there talking to community groups, but we're also able to connect them to the experts in around our relationship with James Cook University and the Resilient Building Council around getting those experts there. One of the other parts in the next phasing of the project is also to engage with the state. So we've got significant state buildings here as well, and actually look to see what they're doing. So we're in that initial phase of city-owned infrastructure, and then we'll be expanding it out to.
So just to follow on from Councillor Castro's question. What's the best method if there's let's say a church or a non-government building in our communities that are interested in engaging with the Disaster Management Centre? By what mechanism should they do that? Should they contact through the councillor, or should it go direct to you guys?
Yeah, or through the councillors, or directly through to the DMU through our generic inbox, and that's the best way it gets triaged. So if a councillor works around, we just refer it to us, and we'll have the team go out and have a discussion.
That's great. Yep. I had Councillor Martin next, and then Councillor Gates.
Thanks, Chair. Obviously, we've got Tallabudger Creek, Currumbin Creek, which is susceptible to flooding, and I was just wondering if you could talk to, I guess, the thinking around potential risk. Obviously, the furthest south place of refuge we've got is Burleigh Waters, but just given those river systems, if those communities south of that would be potentially cut off, or, the thinking around that.
Absolutely, thank you. And through you, Chair, thank you, Councillor Martin, for the question. There is an obvious gap in the south, and we know that. So we're working with the Community Services Facility Review to identify what they're looking at there. One of the things that the federal government is looking favourable upon at the moment is cross-border funding of hardened projects. And I think there's a space there. We've got a really good relationship with Tweed Shire Council, and I think there's some space there for us to explore that together, and it's certainly on our radar. But to your point, we do know that there's an obvious gap in the south.
I've got Councillor Gates, and then I've got Councillor Doran.
Thanks, Chair. Just noting these are short-term options, has the Pimpamar Community Centre been constructed? Where is it, please? Oh, so there is no Pimpamar Community Centre. There's the Pimpamar Sports Hub. I thought this must be a new building.
Sorry, I think that might be a incorrect naming convention there.
Okay.
Councillor, my apologies.
So so we've got it really clear.
Yep.
What's that a picture of?
It's not the Sports Hub, which is, well, maybe it is from a funny angle, but
some clarification
it doesn't
now.
look like the Pimpamar Sports Hub, does it?
It's the sports.
Okay.
It's a sports hub, yeah. That's what it looked like to me. And it doesn't have a community, it's not called the community centre, but it has community rooms available, if I remember the tour there.
Yeah, it does, but it's called the Pimpamar Sports Hub, and that was confusing.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Great. Councillor Doran.
Thank you, Chair. So, Mark, we trust you to have a city lens on all of these things, and obviously we appreciate what you did in 2023 and your team did 2023 and during Tropical Cyclone Alfred. But I think in something like this, it's incumbent upon us or me as local councillor to put a Division 11 frame on the facilities and the way in which we're going to respond to future disasters. In the post-Alfred cleanup, there wasn't any short-term or long-term or any facilities available for evacuation for Division 11. And I note that in the current places of refuge assessments, they are heavily skewed towards the north. And I note your comment just now around the south having a gap. But there is, to me, when you look at the places that are listed within this report, there appears to me to be quite a significant gap in the centre as well. I know Belly Waters could get power and Starlink, but it is quite a small facility. Could you give us some insight into what you're thinking around providing some facilities for that, I'm going to say Mudgeeraba through to Surfers Paradise Centre core, because travel during disasters is actually one of the things that you do recommend against. And when I read the reports, the one thing that pops out to me is that my area and surrounding areas doesn't have the facilities that the others are proposed to have.
Through you, Chair, I'll be guided by you. My understanding the community service review at the moment has not been released, so it might be more appropriate that I bring a report back enclosed around that. I'll be guided by you in relation to that.
I think the question is very pertinent to what we're talking about here. There does seem to be a gap, but it sounds like also there's a plan to not only work with council buildings, but to work in partnership with, other government buildings and or private. And it occurs to me in the middle of Robina there is a not insignificant, fairly resilient building in the strong car parks at Robina Town Centre and also the stadium. So without wanting to presume that those are the types of places that might be part of the next phase of this engagement with public and other levels of government's buildings and private buildings, would it be fair to say that some of those sorts of options might be explored as part of our whole of city resilience plan?
Yeah, absolutely. And even from a commercial perspective, we have had discussions during Alfred and post Alfred, which there are some commercial sensitivities around that we could discuss in a closed item. But I'd be happy to bring that forward again to committee if that's...
I think this is important enough for us to deal with right now. So I think your question is actually really important. Maybe is anyone okay with us moving to close just to have those dealt with? Would anyone object to that? Let's do that. I'll move to close because I think it actually would be great for you to explore that more. Can I have a seconder?
Commercial in confidence, is that why?
I think the reason is commercial in confidence, and I think the manager has outlined that there are some commercial agreements in negotiation that would prejudice an outcome by us making them public. Can I have a seconder move to close? Councillor Martin. All those in favour? That motion is carried. If I can just get the streaming. Welcome back, everyone. There were some questions enclosed about basically private entities or private or commercially owned properties that have had some negotiation with council, and as a result of those commercial negotiations, we needed to move to close necessarily. Is there any other questions in open? No? I'm going to move the item, and I'll just, Councillor Wilkinson will second it. Did anyone want to speak to it today? I'll be happy to defer my opening remarks. Anyone want to talk about resilience? No? All right. Well, today we had a conversation about our response, the city's response to a number of reports that have been put together. One in particular, the tropical cyclone Alfred, southeast Queensland and northeastern New South Wales report produced by James Cook University, and it talks about the resilience of our city and specifically some of the council buildings that could be enhanced. And some of the design principles we have in potential future buildings that could be enhanced in order to make sure that our city is more resilient when we have heavy rainfall, disaster events, heavy wind events. One of the things that we talked about is about retrofitting solutions to our existing buildings. We also talked about making sure that design standards for our future buildings are having regard for these changing climate and the seriousness of some of the storms we're seeing. But we also had an element that has only just recently been announced, which is where we're trying to make private homes and private buildings more resilient as well. We've got that Resilient Homes program that's being rolled out right now, where we're providing support to a number of residents to help them with their buildings. This work is necessary and really important to make sure that we are as resilient as we possibly can be when it comes to withstanding future storms. And I commend it to council to support. Did anyone want to have any other comments? All those in favour? That motion is carried. One thing I will say as we finish up is that Mark, who heads up our disaster management team, has offered to councillors that if there are buildings that are non-government buildings in each of our divisions that could potentially add value to our whole of city resilience, we should feel comfortable submitting those to the DMC for investigation if they can form part of our broader network of resilient buildings in the city. Awesome. Thanks very much. There is one general business item, and it relates to some travel for a music industry conference. This committee is responsible for arts and culture in the city, and with the approval of the CEO, I've just put this up, which is a visit to the major Australian music industry conference in Brisbane, being held from the 1st to the 5th of September. It is possible that the conference registration will ultimately be complimentary. It hasn't been confirmed yet, but this is the total cost that it could possibly be. So I'll move this and ask for a seconder. Councillor Castro, thank you. I'll leave those opening remarks as my close. All those in favour? That motion is carried. Thank you. We've just taken the vote, but no one raised their hand. I'm happy to. We've just resolved it, but I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Well, I wondered if that funding included accommodation, because it's not normal for us to seek accommodation when it's 45 minutes down the road to Brisbane.
So the conference goes into the evening, and yes, it does include accommodation because the conference is a day and night event.
Okay, well, I'm aware of many that the Mayor has attended that accommodation has not been sought. So I just make that as a comment. And I was also going to ask you what you feel the benefit to council is of your attendance.
Yeah, so I think that we're about to, in the forward planning, you can see that we're reviewing some of our arts and culture activity. The music industry on the coast is something that is quite important to us, and we provide support for things like the Gold Coast Music Awards, a number of music events that are attached to Bleach, and having had conversations with both Helen, Glengarry and Invest Gold Coast and Q Music themselves in some of our Gold Coast Music Network activities, they said that it would have great value for me to provide, to learn insights of other cities and the music industry itself to see ways that council could perhaps do that business better.
Okay.
There's also 9 Gold Coast artists that have been selected to perform, and there's definitely a promotional element of that as well. We're quite proud of the growth and impetus that is happening in the Gold Coast music sector, and that was also an element of my
I don't know anything about the conference. I would need to have a look. I have. This is the first time that I've seen this. So
the city has had representatives at Big Sound, which is the name of the event, every year for the last 10 years.
Right.
And we have also provided a bursary program in previous years where we have sent music industry participants from the Gold Coast to this conference. It's probably the single largest music industry conference that's held in Australia.
So are officers also attending?
As I understand it, there is current negotiations for officers from Invest Gold Coast to attend this year. But at the moment, there is also some organisational change that means that it's possible that some officers may not attend who have previously attended.
Okay, well, that's fine, but I would have preferred to see who else is attending and whether there is a necessity for a councillor to be in attendance if officers are.
Yeah, okay. The matter's resolved. Did anyone have any other general business or any other matters they wanted to raise today? Meeting closed at 9:40.